Please welcome to the stage, Erik Funkhouser.
Well, thanks for having me. My name is Erik Funkhouser. I'm the Executive Director of Good Energy Collective. I'm here today just to call us to the end of the day and thank everybody for joining. I have a few things to go over in terms of logistics and preparation for tomorrow. But first of all, I wanted to start by just mentioning a couple of small things. First of all, as a moment of just recognition of someone who's having a very special moment in their career, I thought I'd take a moment to mention from the dais Alejandra Parendujon with Carbon Pulse is celebrating a very important milestone today. She just published her 500th article as a journalist. It's a big deal, so I just wanted to mention it because I think that's very special. But obviously, in the broader context, it's an interesting time, and in some ways, things have looked a little grim. But I think it's important, from this perspective, to remember that we go through this, and every year we feel like we're heading in one direction, but the writers on the staff of White Lotus always turn it around by the end, and I think we're on that same trajectory this year. So I'm really happy to be here. A couple of years ago, a bunch of us realized that it was important for us to bring some connective fibers together in this space. If you think back 3 or 4 years ago, it was a very exciting time. There's a lot of ground forming, but there was a lot of lacking clarity in the directions of this community. And there were plenty of ideas, there's plenty of momentum, but we really needed a focal point not only for carbon removal generally, the market structure, the participation of different adjacent areas of the private sector, but then obviously federal policy. And in particular, we needed a lane for DAC itself. So not just folded in with our partners and our great compatriots in the other areas of carbon removal, but directly for this technology sector. And folks at the DAC Coalition, including their board chair, Nick, and Jason Hockman, went on a campaign to recruit a few of us who had things like those precious things like staff and interns to try to throw together some sort of meaningful conference that would be at a scale large enough to drive a conversation and set a cadence that would be forward-looking and would help to make sure that there was some milestone every year that we could look forward to, share ideas, and make sure that we had a connection space for folks who only have a little bit of time each year to think about DAC and the folks who think about it every day, day in and day out. This year, I can't tell you how remarkably different it was, even despite all the changes in the sector and the changes in the wider policy space to get folks to listen to us, that this was a worthwhile endeavor to bring it together, and we'll do it every year until we solve climate change. We'll do it for a while. No, but thanks for coming, and remember to tell folks to be here. This is now an institutional facet of this sector. We want to continue making this a milestone in the annual calendar. Looking forward to tomorrow, we have a different slate. We're going to get into a number of topics that look at DAC and the current state of the DAC sector from a different perspective. So first of all, we're going to talk about the long slog of project development and what that looks like from a regional standpoint. If you talk to anyone who actually builds assets on the ground and has to negotiate land considerations, permitting, licensing, working with local groups, building social license, it is very difficult to cover this in a paper or look at it as slide deck. We want to talk about that from folks who are dealing with that on a day in and day out basis. We're going to have a couple of very special speakers with a lot of careful expertise talking to us about trade. So we've been invited folks from Bipartisan Policy Center and Saganam Saha formerly of the Kerry EPIC team to join us and talk about what the opportunity is for trade policy and what that means for DAC and carbon removal as part of the next chapter of a federal administration. We're also going to talk about an important component of this, which is how we'll deal with the need for power supply particularly for clean power supply, as we have certain stumbling blocks in the renewable sector. But more importantly, there's massive competition for growth domestically and globally for perfectly clean power to work on carbon negative solutions. So we'll be going over all those airy, lighthearted topics tomorrow, whilst also hearing from more announcements from folks in the sector. This is really a lot of fun. Before I came up here, they grabbed me by the shirt and made sure that I didn't mention that I was the last person standing between you and happy hour, so I'm going to sidestep that entirely. I'll just mention that tomorrow morning, the doors open at 8:15. Feel free to come in early. We'll have the coffee going, but the programming will start sharp at 9 a.m. And just a second about happy hour. We're going to be serving drinks. You can get drinks and come in here. You can go in the other room, but it's just across the hall where we serve lunch. So please stick around. The last thing we want to say is, on behalf of the organizers, which I should shout out, include obviously the centerpiece was Jason Hockman, but also Dan Pike and the RMI team, as well as C2ES, Good Energy Collective, and then Jack Andreessen from Breakthrough Energy, who couldn't be here today. But thanks to all of them. Thanks to Kobe Ahmed. If you haven't met Kobe, we'll talk about him tomorrow, but he really helps us to keep this together and have an actual event, and does so on a budget since we don't have a whole lot of money here. But do us a favor for coming and having already been here, make sure to meet a couple of new people, folks you haven't already had a chance to network with. There are definitely some new faces. We have visitors from Brazil, we have visitors from the UK, so there's plenty of folks to make feel welcome before you start to gear up for St. Patrick's Day. And remember to send your follow-up emails too, that's always important. Anyway, thank you so much. With that, I'll conclude day one of the conference. Please enjoy happy hour, and we'll see you bright and early tomorrow.